What's up, LEGO builders? Welcome back to Coconut Brick Studios. Now, I've been on break for the past month from Mygeeto updates, but I've still been working in the background, planning things, decaling marines. Oh, and I moved the entire MOC to a new studio. Today, you get to see that whole process as I explain why I, once again, am moving a giant MOC in the middle of a build series. And I'll be giving you guys an update on my Galactic Marine army, which has nearly doubled in size. It's also a building update, so I'm gonna finish the last support pillar for the main bridge so there's no more drooping. This is it, the final push to the end of the series. If you wanna have a sig fig represent you in the MOC and see the finale before anyone else, join my YouTube memberships. Each member will get early access to all the finale content and a clone representing them in the MOC, allowing them to take part in the battle. All you gotta do is click the join button underneath this video. Well, if you're ready to see the most action-packed update so far, don't forget to execute Order 66 on that like button, and let's get started. I started this whole project back in October of last year in a new studio. It was alright, I had just enough room for the build as well as some space for some shelves and another table, but you can see how cramped it became over the course of this series as the new MOC grew, and the limited space on the sides of the tables where most of the building was happening made it harder for me to build and film. Especially once I started to work on the city, which was partially blocked off by the back wall, making it hard to reach the undersides of the city in the middle of the MOC. Plus the room itself was pretty barren and ugly, and the white walls made it difficult to get good photos and footage for thumbnails and b-roll. As most of you may know, I'm in the process of converting a shed into a small house, as well as building a brand new, much bigger LEGO room. I was planning on waiting to move all my LEGO until Mygeeto was done, but I finished the new studio sooner than expected, and Mygeeto was still at a point where I just might be able to move it. But I knew if I waited even a couple more weeks and the city went in, it would be impossible to move. So I found myself in a similar predicament to what happened with my Coruscant MOC last year. Hurry and finish the MOC, take it apart, and then move everything to the new place, or just move it now and have more time and space but risk breaking it and have to go through the headache of moving a giant build. In the end, I decided to take the risk because I was super cramped in the current setup and I felt like the quality of future videos and the finale of Mygeeto would be way better in the new studio. So I got to work separating and disassembling Mygeeto into as big of chunks as I could. My room is so small I had to play Tetris moving bridges and tables around until I could get some of the tables out from under Mygeeto and use them. My first objective was clearing out in front of the mountain, moving the bridges, building prototypes, and anything else that was chilling in front. Next to go was what little of the city I had built, since those buildings weren't really connected to anything and would topple over as soon as I tried moving this around, and I wasn't even gonna try to take this thing down the stairs with the building still on. If more of the city had been built, I would have been in big trouble, as you'll see in a bit. Once the path was clear, I scooted the mountain out into the middle of the room so I could deal with it. This was the main obstacle, moving a massive chunk of solid brick. I wanted to see if it could fit through the doorway in one solid piece, so I began the painstaking process of slowly turning this MOC around so the backside was facing the other way. This footage kind of reminds me of a time lapse of a bunch of tugboats pushing or turning a giant cargo ship out to sea, or from blocking a big canal. Oh, come on! I'm so glad I didn't build the back wall here, because if I had, there's no way this would have been able to go out the door and immediately turn into the hallway. My plan was to hook one of the side walls through the doorway, then slide the rest of the MOC through while turning it at the same time. Here I ran into my first big problem. The MOC was too wide for the door. So another option would be to break the MOC in two along one of the break points in the base plates. This would give me two smaller, easier to move sections of rock wall. But that was easier said than done. I built this thing to be as strong as possible, so there weren't really any fault lines in the brick, and even if I figured out how to cleanly separate the slopes in the front, is an even bigger tangle of brick. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized I would need to do some serious breakage just to get this thing in half. My last option was to remove the foundations of the city and base plates under it. This allowed me to hook the far end of the MOC through the doorway and then start to turn and slide it at the same time so the wider portion of the rock wall would fit through the doorway. This was a long process which involved me and my brother sliding tables in place, then sliding the MOC across them like a giant block of stone. But thankfully this worked and I managed to get the whole thing out into the hall, downstairs, and out the front door in one piece. It was smooth sailing after that. My new studio is very wide and open, so getting stuff in was a piece of cake. I also painted the walls blue and made the place brighter and more interesting. This was a big reason why I moved Mygeeto so soon. I knew this more colorful setup would make the MOC look a lot better and allow me to capture cooler and more vibrant footage for videos. I also have an 8-foot garage door on one wall, so getting stuff in was real easy. I'm really glad I took a month-long break from the Mygeeto updates because it gave me time to do all this. And other than figuring out how to get that mountain out of the room, this was a piece of cake compared to moving Coruscant. Once the mountain was in, we brought in the rest of the MOC and tables. I had to move the rest of my parts to the new place as well, but the exciting part is over, so I won't make you watch all that. Next came the mighty task of reassembling Mygeeto. It's once again a game of Tetris, trying to get the tables moved around and into position. This will be the last time I build something without making it at least somewhat modular, even if I don't plan on moving it. I got really lucky with the bridges. They traveled really easily and the mountain was just narrow enough to fit through that door, but I might not be that lucky next time. Once I had all the big chunks reassembled and the bridges back in place, it was time to tackle the city. A lot of the support pillars broke and parts of some were still attached to the base of the city, so I started by placing down all the base plates and refitting the foundation to the rockwork. Then I pieced together the various pillars. I can already feel how much better it'll be working on the mock in the new place. This was the first time I was able to stand behind the city and have easy access to the underside and middle of the mock. I think knowing this will make me a lot more motivated to work on the city because now it'll actually be enjoyable, and now I won't be straining my back reaching over the front of the rock wall to build. Oh yeah, look at this. Mygeeto has officially been packed up, disassembled, moved to the new studio, and reassembled, and it looks so good. These blue walls are making everything pop and look even more vibrant. So we are officially back on schedule, back to business with building Mygeeto, but even better this time, because check this out. I have a path, a full 360-degree route around Mygeeto. I mean, I could go full Disneyland here, build a little ride and charge people to ride around my mock looking at it. So very happy with this. I now have room to build, stand, set up light fixtures, and as well as setting up, filming equipment so I can get all kinds of cool shots for the finale. This went really smooth. It was easier than I thought it would be. It was definitely really complicated trying to get the rock wall down the stairs, but that was really the hardest part. And I'm so glad I chose to move this thing in one solid piece and remove the top part of the city instead of trying to break it down right here, because the more I thought about it, the more that was just gonna be a huge pain. I mean, not even just talking about breaking this front part, you have all these slopes and shapes that I've created that I would have to break. But I mean, look at this, moving along the back, I'd have to go through all this filler brick, and it's an even bigger nightmare back here because there's just chaos. There's no semblance of organization or like a good fault line that I could work with. So that would have been an absolute nightmare. And honestly, you guys saw how quickly the city came back together. It was much smoother than I thought it would be. There's a look at some of the Galactic Marines I've got. I think most of these guys are the old ones, or the older ones. The new ones that were just decaled are still in the old studio. So I did run into one problem so far. That's the rest of the house where I'll be living and stuff. But there's no outlets running along this entire side of the wall because, half this wall is a door. Big old barn door, and then behind it there aren't any outlets. So the problem with that is I can't really put any lights in right here right now, so that's why this half of the mock is kind of dark. So I'm probably just gonna have to get an extension cord and run it so I can plug my lights in right here. Not a huge deal, I can definitely work around that. You can see I've got plenty of outlets around the rest of the studio. And real quick, as for my plans for the part shelves, I'm gonna put them all along these two walls right here. So we'll have a row running right there and then maybe a little one coming this direction. So all the parts will be behind the mock. And I'm gonna be doing that over the course of me building this as well. So this whole studio is gonna kind of come together slowly as I'm working on the mock. Believe it or not, moving Mygeeto wasn't the only thing I got done while on break. In my mid-series update, I talked about the fact that I was very behind on decaling Marines. At that time, I had about 18 of the 45 to 50 I needed, so things were not looking great. But I cranked out a ton over the last 2 weeks, and this represents how many I got decaled and or assembled, which totaled up to about 15 Marines, almost doubling how many I have. Now I only need around 10 more, so if I decal about 2 a week, I should hit my goal by the time Mygeeto is done. I also bought a bunch of these backpacks from Camino Bricks to complete the survival suits and help these guys manage the harsh climates. I've slowly been accumulating parts over the past weeks and finally have the slopes needed to finish the last support pillar. I really want to get this done so I can stop using my red bins to hold up the bridge. You're pretty familiar with the pillar building process at this point, but this one's different because it comes together in 3 big chunks. I did this so the middle chunk, which has a tunnel running through it, could be at the same angle as the second bridge, which runs through it at a different angle than the main bridge and its supports. I always confuse and give myself a headache every time I have to explain this riddle of a build, but hopefully after this update it'll all be done and I can move on. I did forget to buy those long inverted slopes, so I had to substitute dark bluish gray ones, but I think this adds to the story of the mock. A bridge this big and high up would definitely take a beating and need repairs, so the dark bluish gray section represent parts of the bridge that have been replaced. Now all that's left is a tile off the top and add a couple of studs so the bridge can connect to it. at last. The moment of truth is here. I cleared off the pillar, peeled off this chunk, and stuck it to the top, and it looks pretty good, but the whole thing is too tall. I need this flat part to be at the same level as the underside of the bridge, but it's not a big deal. I wasn't working with specific measurements, so I knew once I had all these chunks together, I could figure out an exact height. I'm gonna remove a couple of rows off the middle section. I don't plan on having any large vehicles coming through the tunnel, so I'm gonna pop this piece off and shrink that as well. This tunnel is for maintenance and civilian vehicles, so I don't need to worry about any monster trucks or anything trying to get through. Once I had the middle piece at the right height, I reattached it to the bridge and added a large turntable to the roof. That way the top section of the pillar can rotate at the right angle to line up with the main bridge. That's gonna leave some weird looking flat patches where the middle of the pillar meets the top one, but I just couldn't think of a better way to do this, and the little plateaus don't bother me. Before we take a look at the finished result, I need to add one more side panel to the second bridge so that our first peek of the now connected bridges will be as complete as possible. I'm really excited to see the finished bridges because they're essentially the main focus of the mock, and I must say I'm pretty pleased with the architecture and functionality I've been able to achieve. Let me know in the comments if you like the turntable design I went with for the pillar, or if you think it makes the pillar look weird. This is just what I was hoping for. The second pillar now supports both bridges and allows the second bridge to cut through it at an angle with the tunnel. Ever since I first planned this mock, I knew the intersection of the two bridges was going to be the most challenging part with all the different angles and shapes. So to have it done is a huge success and makes me very happy. My break from Mygeeto was a complete success. Not only did I move the mock to a new studio and catch up on my Galactic Marines, but most importantly, I feel motivated and very excited to work on Mygeeto again. I really needed that fire to be relit, and allowing myself to go out and work on other projects really helped with that. Next week, I want to get all the rest of the city foundations in and add more battle damage to the main bridge, but that wraps up this week. Thank you guys all so much for watching. Don't forget to let me know what you thought about all this down below in the comments, and I'll catch you next time, but until then, happy building.